Good morning. Good morning. My name is Nancy Tanner. I'm the Howard County Judge. I want to welcome you to the 5th Annual Government Day. Today is our regularly scheduled Commissioners Court meeting. We always have it here in the historic Second Bay building so we can house all these kiddos. These are you guys are our future. I'm a little scared. No, I'm kidding. I'm very happy to have you here. In my capacity as county judge, I do probates, guardianships, mental health, cremations, but the best part of the whole thing is that I get to preside over this court. The worst part is that we have to do the budget. Never a fun time. Right now we are operating a $57 million budget and it goes up every year. So please pray for us as that comes up. I want to have a little bit of fun this morning. When I mention your school name, I want the table where you're seated, I want you to stand up and shout out your mascot. We're going to have a competition, okay? You ready? Okay. Wait for it. Now we're on. Everyone up. You got it again. Come on, get it out. Everyone up. Bushland High School. All right. Okay, come on, you can do better. Bushland, do it again. Do it again. Okay. Capital High School. Do it again. Okay. River Road High School. There you go. Tascosa High School. San Jacinto Christian Academy. Holy Cross Academy. Did I forget anybody? Did you everybody? Holland Park? Does that get your blood going in? Everybody awake? Okay, just for a second, just a couple of housekeeping. Women's bathroom that way, men's bathroom this way, boys, girls, okay? Some of you aren't men and women yet. Chief Drain from the City of Amarillo, the Chief of the Police Department is here. Come on up, Chief, and also come on up. City Manager, and they're just going to say come with.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Ed Drain. I'm the police chief here in Amarillo, and it is great to see that the county is putting the county commissioners and staff putting this on for you guys. Because as you can see, I work in law enforcement, and most people, when they think of our criminal justice system, they think of the police, city police officers, because there's so many of us who wear uniforms, we're out there. But our county government, though, our police department, and being able to have the bad guys off the street could not function without the county. In fact, that is the primary role of the county is to manage our criminal justice system. Now, you're a county judge, also due to some other duties that she has. But if you think about it, the sheriff is run by Sheriff Thomas, is a big part of that. Probation role is at the county level. Obviously, our prosecutors and our judges are at the county level. Even our district court and our county clerks are also involved in the criminal justice process. So we wouldn't be able to keep our city safe if it wasn't for our county government. They are the biggest part of public safety here, and I appreciate the work that they do.
I'm Jeff Miller, I'm the city manager of the city of Amarillo, and as she said, as he pointed out, one of the greatest things that we can do together, and one of the reasons why we really appreciate our county commissioners and county court, is we are partners. We work together because we occupy the same space. They're jurisdictional partners. And it's not just the city of Amarillo and Potter County, it's also Potter County and Randall County, and all the surrounding counties with Potter County. We all have to work together to not be stepping on each other's toes, to make sure we're not duplicating effort, to make sure we're taking care of our resources as good as possible, to make sure we're being as effective as possible in providing the resources and services that our taxpayers expect. So, as great partners, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you, Potter County, Judge, Commissioners, everything you do, Jared. But it's a great partnership. So that's one of the things I want to highlight here. It's not about who can take credit for anything. It's about what we can accomplish together.
Thanks, guys. Okay, let me take a moment to introduce everybody on the stage right now. The Commissioners Court consists of
I'm making sure you have.
Commissioner Kelly, Precinct 1, Commissioner Mordilla, Precinct 2, Commissioner Church, Precinct 3, Commissioner Vaughn, Precinct 4. We also have Julie Smith, County Clerk. We also have Scott Brumley, County Attorney, Vicki Shelton, Purchasing Agent, and Carrie Auditor, Carrie Good, the Auditor. Now, as for the kids, I'm just going to do from the list I have, so I'll get out of order, it's okay. From Amarillo High, we have Claire Keister. Claire, will you stand up? Thank you. From Bushville High School, Kendall Boaz. Right. From Amarillo High School, Julio Gonzalez. Maryland Park School, is it Raquel Manson? And from Paladar High School, Ethan Camp. From River Road High School, Chandler Hayes. Tuscaloosa High School, Will Baxter. And from San Jacinto Christian Academy, Kendra Adams. And from Holy Cross Academy, Joey Benitez. Now we will go ahead with the meeting. We have Bert Palmer, who will do the invocation today, so if you will please stand. Everybody standing for the pledges to the both flags.
So as you gather today, your individual churches and communities of faith are going to proselytize this, we're going to invite people into that, but the role of the clergy in a community involvement is not to try and proselytize, it's to recognize that whatever your name is for God, every decision you make in the community is a spiritual decision, right? And so we invoke just God's presence in this place, and we open our hearts to it, so we bow together and believe. Oh God, you created all things, you make them good, you created all the people that are here. And so I pray your blessing upon this day that we would all recognize and remember that community doesn't just happen. Community happens because people choose to give themselves in service. We pray that you would bless those who are in the roles of elected service, that you would bless these youth as they grow into adulthood and learn the roles of community service, so that when we look at the challenges faced the brokenness of our world, we would recognize the gifts you've given us to meet human need, is to walk in the way that you designed and desire our life to be. For we pray these things in your holy name. And all of God's people said, Amen. And we then pledge, you're still not in the pledge, right? Face flag, and we're going to pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I pledge allegiance to the United States, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Okay, everybody hear me? Okay, today is
Monday, April 23rd, 2018, and I call the Potter County Commission to order. First thing on the agenda today is resolution of minutes from the April 9, 2018 and April 11, 2018 Commission Court meetings. Any corrections or changes to that? There are none, so recognized. Number 2, the vouchers, to consider and act upon the approval of the payment of vouchers processed by the County Auditor's Office for the period of April 4 to April 18, 2018. And we do have an amendment to that. It's check numbers 179966 through 180176, and wire transfers 1063 through 1069. In the amount of $2,407,792.76. Any questions?
Carrie, I do have one question, on the amended sheet that you provided. The sheriff card fees, is that to avoid those late fees that we were getting? Okay. Thank you.
I move that we approve the vouchers as presented.
Second?
The vouchers are absolutely the bill that the county has to pay every 2 weeks. They're a conglomeration of every department in the county that has pay bills, and so we bring it to the court. Is that good enough? Yeah, okay. And no, that's okay.
Julie,
Yes.
can you speak a little bit into your mic?
Is that better? No, it's not bad.
Oh, it's not perfect.
Well, you have to turn it on for it to work.
Okay, can you hear me better now?
In the back?
Okay. So we have a motion and a second on the vouchers. All in favor, raise your hand. 5-0. Thank you very much. Insurance report, number 3. Kay, is there anything you need to?
No, there was nothing unusual this morning.
Okay.
Kate, just a quick follow-up question. Was there any feedback on the representatives that were here at the last court? I know they were going to meet with you after the presentation and the committee.
We had a very good meeting, and it was just more an introduction than
Okay.
anything else, and all went well.
All right, thank you.
They had some very, very good information. I think we need to follow up with some of that.
Yes.
Okay, so recognize the treasurer's report, number 4. Leanne Jennings. Good morning.
Okay, this morning at Amarillo National Bank, we are earning 1.98%, and our total this morning is $14,840,598.24. Tax pool, we're earning 1.67, with $404,940.07. Tax pool prime, we're earning 1.95 at $16,149,737.62. And then finally, Texas class, we're earning 1.97 and have $2,693.65.07 in that account. So our total cash fund this morning is $42,088,341. As you notice, our A and B is our highest earning right now at 1.98, and it's climbing. We're going to do rate every Monday, and this is what we rated this morning.
So Leanne, I do have a question, mainly for the audience. So will you explain what you're explaining to us? When you say we've got 42 million, what does that mean?
Sure. That's our general fund. We have like 42 accounts of everyone in the county, but the general fund, which you guys oversee and make decisions and rule over, is it's the totals that I'm giving you right now. As an investment officer, the court has appointed me to invest your money. I'm reporting to you where your investments are, what they're earning, and what the totals are. So when I report once a month on just the monthly report, I give you the totals as of this morning, how much cash you have available in your general fund.
So one thing I have in my notes that I think demonstrate how well we have diversified is A and B, at 1.98. So just in terms of, think of it like percentage points, if you will. There's roughly 14 million in that. Texas class, 1.97, around 10 million. So that we don't have all of our eggs in one basket, if you will. If those interest rates start dropping quickly, all of our money isn't in one bucket.
Exactly. And by law, we have to make sure that every penny is collateralized. This is taxpayer dollars, so it's a different type of investment than just personal or someone investing their money. We answer to the public and to the taxpayers as to where their money is, how safe it is, and that's my job to give you that information and to keep you informed as to what's going on.
Thank you. So recognized. Number 5, National Travel and Tourism Week, to consider and act upon a proclamation deeming April 23rd, through May 13th, 2018 as Tourism Weeks in Potter County. We have Eric Miller and his entourage that want to come up, and I will, at your discretion, I will read the proclamation whenever you're ready. Can you read it right now? Yes?
Ready? Go ahead.
Okay. All right. Potter County Tourism Week Proclamation 2018. Whereas the Amarillo's area travel and tourism industry employs more than 8,000 residents, welcomes more than 2 million visitors from all over the world each year, and has an annual economic impact of more than $840 million. And whereas several world-renowned attractions and events call Potter County home, including the American Quarter Horse Hall of Fame and Museum, Big Texan Steak Ranch, Cadillac Ranch, Don Harrington Discovery Center, and the World Championship Ranch Rodeo. And whereas the future of the local tourism industry is very bright, with new hotel development, attraction expansion, along with new dining and shopping options developing in all parts of our area. Now therefore we, the county judge and commissioners of Potter County, Texas, in support of National Travel and Tourism Weeks, do hereby proclaim April 23rd through May 13th, 2018 as Tourism Weeks in Potter County, Texas, and express our appreciation to all those who play a part in our tourism industry's success.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you. Why don't you introduce yourself as well as the people that are with you?
Bert Holland did this, so I know I can do this. Yes, I would like to do that. First of all, thank you, Judge and Commissioners, and most importantly, our special guests and students from the area. I have some friends here that I'd like to introduce. I'd like to introduce Stephanie Price. She is chair of our CBC board. And of course, Gary Malberg is president of the Amarillo Chamber. And I'd be remiss, and I take it out on me personally. We have a great staff, and I'd like them to stand, they're in the back. A great staff of our Convention and Visitor Council office. So thank you guys for coming very much. I really only have one extra message, because you heard how important the tourism industry in our proclamation, with thousands of jobs and millions of dollars and millions of visitors every year. So I want to make an invitation, an open invitation to you all to enjoy events of Tourism Week. And I want to do one special event, especially since Stephanie is standing right here. May 5th, Saturday, May 5th, we are having Museum Day. 8 area museums. That may surprise you that we have 8 museums. We do. Excellent museums. 8 area museums are participating. They will have special offers all day. It may be buy one admission, get one free. It may be 50% off at their gift shop. Whatever. They will have special offers all day, and they'd love to see you all, see us, let's do it that way, a little more formally. They'd love to see us out of their museums. They'd love to see your family and friends as well. So please spread the word. May 5th, Museum Day here in Potter County and in Randall County. And that's my message today. So enjoy tourism all year round in our area. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Eric, appreciate it.
I have to get a plug in. It's timing's everything. One of the things that you said in that proclamation, and I hope everybody heard, $850 million was spent in tourism in Amarillo. What does that mean? That means a lot of jobs. And it's timely having all these young folks here today. As you complete your education, wherever that takes you, we want you to come back to Amarillo to find employment. We have jobs, and we're only as strong as our workforce. So you are our future. So as you pursue your educations, congratulate you. Evidently, y'all the tops of your class. Y'all be congratulated for being here today. Wherever that education takes you, I hope you consider coming back to Amarillo, because Amarillo's growing. Thank you very much.
I move that we approve the proclamation.
Oh,
What?
oh, Stephanie, sorry.
That's fine. I just wanted to echo Eric and say how important tourism is and how much we value what the Commission Visitor Council does as an attractions partner in the Amarillo Chamber. If you have not been out to visit area attractions or been part of what we're doing, I encourage all of you to go out there. There is arts in our community. It's very vibrant. We have lots of great museums and attractions and everything going on. So take advantage of Tourism Week that Eric has put together and go see your community and be a part of what we're doing.
Thank you, Stephanie.
I serve on the executive council with, and I have interrupted her before, so I'm sorry. I would move that we approve the Potter County Tourism Week proclamation for 2018, which is March 23rd through April 23rd through May 13th, 2018.
I second that.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. 5-0. Thank you so much.
Thank you all very much.
And here's the sign for you today. Okay, number 6, Santa Fe Historical Railway Museum. To consider and act upon the appointment of Cheryl Williams, MD, Heath Acker, and Don Judd to the Board of Directors. Mr. Wolfram. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
For the record, I'm Walter Wolfram. I'm here as president of the Santa Fe Historical Railroad Museum Board. Several years ago, the county judge, Arthur Ware, wanted to refurbish the building we're sitting in. He could just purchase it and got a grant from the Texas Historical Commission. One of the terms was that the county had to create the Railroad Museum. Arthur Ware appointed me to create that museum, and we started. We have a lease on the second floor of this building for that museum, and we have about 22,000 artifacts on that floor. We determined that nobody would come off this high floor to go to the second floor of this building to watch the museum. So we have now set out to create the museum in another location. I have had 3 deaths on my board in the last few years, and the way that the board is set up, I make a nomination to the county judge of these replacements, and then the county judge makes an appointment, and then the commission's court passes whether or not those appointments will be accepted. I have made a recommendation to the county judge. Appointment of Cheryl Williams, who is a medical doctor, and she's a medical director of quality DSA, medical director of stroke program DSA, and Heath Acker is vice president of National Bank to replace, hopefully, to replace Jim Thompson, who is vice president, he passed away. Don Judd is former owner of the automobile dealerships in Amarillo and Cadillac Ford County South and Dodge in Amarillo. it back here, and those are the recommendations I would make to the county judge. And she would make those appointments, and I asked the court, Commissioners Court, to approve those appointments for the serve on the board. By way of current activity on the railroad, if we'd like to have some of the young people might like to hear about that. We have about $350,000 in the bank right now, and we're spending some of that, not a whole lot of it, but we're having a complete engineering study made of the Santa Fe Railroad building. If you don't know where that is, it's 401 South Grand Street, and usually serves the Santa Fe Railroad as its railroad station. We have an engineering study on that, and we have determined that it's going to take $5 to $6 million to fix the building, and it will be my obligation to see that our organization raise that money if the city of Amarillo gives us the lease to that building. Right now, we found asbestos in the building. The roof has to be taken off and replaced. All the windows and doors have to be replaced. The electricity and water system were put in 1920, they have to be replaced. We have no air conditioning, that has to be put in. Have put in an elevator, and they have to modernize the rest of it. Other than that, there's not a whole lot to do. Anyway, thank you for letting me be here, and any questions you have concerning the museum.
Mr. Wilson, would you give us just a quick synopsis of the duties of those that you are requesting appointment and clarification by the court?
Well, the board, of course, the board functions by resolution and directs me to take action, or other people to take action. And these people have shown leadership capacity. We have what's called a power board. We put people on here who have high profile in the community, who have backgrounds for administration and managing large sums of money and large activities. Their job is to oversee what we do and make sure that's on track. Did I answer your question or not? That's kind of close. That's kind of close.
You did.
Mr. Wilson, what's your thought about raising that kind of money?
I'm sorry,
what is your thought about being able to raise that kind of money?
We have a lady standing by right now, contractors to be signed. If we get a lease on the building from the city, then this lady will come on as a full-time fundraiser, and we think we can raise it. Our plan is to have a series of small, discrete contracts on the repair process, rather than have a series where you depend contract raise $6 million. The first contract, of course, will pick up the asbestos, and then the second will be replace the roof, and the second replace the door. We believe we can raise the funds fast enough to take care of those and keep on course.
You also mentioned the artifacts. Where are they being stored?
Second floor, right down 9 floors below us.
It's all there?
It is, if the county had, if y'all didn't get spirits, it's still there.
We did have a garage sale, I don't know, that may not have, no. So Walter, are any of these people here today? Did any of them come with you?
No, they're all busy. Don Judd, let me tell you about Don Judd. Don and I created a matter called 2100 in 1983. And raised an awful lot of money and raised an awful lot of things. But out of that, we created the Amarillo Economic Development Corporation. He was president, and we brought WT into the Indian system. This thing's out in San Jose. But he is now president of the board. We have just created a foundation for the Ann Proud Foundation for the Sunset Art Center. Some of you are going with that. He is running that right now. And, I recommend him running on the board. I am a person who steals other people's ideas, and I can take other people's ideas and do it myself. But I'm not an idea person. He is a great idea person.
I have a couple of questions, if I may. So you mentioned the Santa Fe Depot, the potential lease. I noticed that the city recently moved forward for a subcommittee. I want to make sure I'm clear. When you talk about that potential relationship, are you looking at the footprint of the whole building or being a participant in that whole structure?
No, we do not want the gallery at this time. We're talking about the south 4 acres, which encompasses 27,000 square feet in the railroad station building, and Railway Express Agency Building immediately south, and another 5,000 square feet in there. And we were trying to acquire 501 South Grand, which is a large two-story building, but it's been basically abandoned. We want to have it torn down and put a park there. And I read it pretty extensively. We've asked the BNSF to give us the tract of land which is immediately south of this property. And it's about 180 feet east and west and a third of a mile north and south. And we've not been turned that. We want to keep that just vacant, and we want to put 2 tracks in there, bringing 20 people in this property.
So when you discuss a potential partnership with the city, and you're looking at all of these tracts of land and or part of that infrastructure, is part of the lease negotiation, are you saying we would go then raise $4 to $5 million to offset that ask? Or is there a lease payment? Like what does that structure look like, even at a high level, to have that discussion?
In ideal situations, the city would give us a 30-year lease with a 30-year option to extend the lease, and option to extend another 30 years at $1 a year. The cost, right now, the city of Emerald is somewhat in financial alignment. And so it would fall upon us to raise all of that money. Then we put the railroad region in it. And one of the things we want to do is put a 300-foot windmill on what looks like a huge parking lot in the southwest corner with a restaurant at 250 feet and the windmill would be
So when you ask the city for a 30-year lease, what's your part in exchange? That's the piece I think I'm a little fuzzy on, so I want to make sure I'm clear.
We can fix it.
Fix it. That's the $4 to $5 million that you've discussed potentially. Okay. And then how often has the board met? I can't think of a time in the last 5 to 6 years that we've made an appointment. So I'm not sure how active the board has been.
The board has not been very active because we've been struggling. We were in negotiations with the prior owner of the building, all of that property.
Okay.
We had an engineering study, preliminary study done, and then we had an appraisal done, and we were in negotiations 5 to 10% of the appraisal. And the city came and gave you more than 100% more than the so we lost out. And since then, we've been on a struggle. Current administration seems to be more on the
And how many total board members do you have, and who appoints?
We have 8 right now. We have 1 vacancy.
I'm sorry, you have 8 and what?
Have 8 currently serving. Excuse me. You add these 3, we have 8. We have 1 serving. We have 1 vacancy.
And of the 8, how many are appointed by the commissioner's court? Like, what does your structure look like?
All of them.
All of them?
Oh, yes. I got appointed, I don't know what I did to Judge Ware. I was made mad and
I know I don't, as a representative of the court, have the full listing of the 8.
Would you want that? Would you mind?
I'll get that. Yeah, you've got it. That'd be great. I can get that after. Now, what about the actual memorabilia? I'm struggling for the right word, right? But I remember the second floor, and I've worked on this topic many years, so I have a little history here. I remember when we were going through the artifacts, we did not have a formal listing of who owned what the document was. I'm trying to be a little cautious before we appoint a board to oversee. I want to make sure that we get our house in order, if you will, and the artifacts certainly being key to any museum. I just remember, this probably goes back 4 years ago, so I may have some of that detail incorrect, but I do remember what a challenge it was because we did not have a formal listing of the artifacts. If anyone were to call, that was definitely a weak spot in that process.
I have contacted the Emerald Area Foundation with a fundraiser, and they furnished me with an artifact list.
Is that also something that we can receive as that artifact list?
Sure.
Okay. And then I have just one final question, Judge. I'm sorry. You know me with my glasses. The $350,000 that you mentioned you have in the bank, how much of that is Potter County funds? I know we haven't donated to this in 5, 6, maybe longer.
You donated 5 years, you donated $250,000. We spent a lot of money. Between the funds, I think, Teddy Thomas is counter funds and other donations.
So part of the normal bookkeeping process would be that we would have clear direction of what our funds are and how they would be used. So I just want to make sure, Judge, I'm communicating that, again, I feel like we need to get our house in order, whether it's funding, getting a good listing of the artifacts, really understanding this potential lease with the city before we, appoint a governance board with even a lot of open questions. And if all 8 seats reside on this court, we very easily could get asked those questions. And I know I can't speak to them.
These particular people are replacing 3 people that have died.
Yes, I mean, that caution all my board members, it's a risky business to be on my board.
It is risky. Don't ever appoint me, please. Okay.
Well, just because the board has been inactive for so long, I'm just trying to call out that I think there's still just which is a great, initiative. Certainly, if the city's willing to entertain this, I know this is a passion of yours, Mr. Wolfram, and something you've been looking at for quite some time. I'm trying to be a little cautious before we appoint a board with so many open questions.
Commissioner, are you looking also for a balance of the judge fees?
I would like to see a balance of the books, absolutely, a balance of the financial books.
Commissioner, you asked us, we gave you an audit of those 3 or 4 years.
Yes, that was 4 years ago. I would imagine something might have changed if we're looking at starting to appoint new governments. Typically, we get an audit process. It's very typical to get an audit every year, get a balance of the books. The county has quite a few interlocal agreements, even with the city. I can think of a couple that we even get quarterly updates, and that's a very small amount in comparison to what we're talking about here. So I'm just calling out my items of caution here. And I'm done. Okay.
Anybody else have any questions?
You want the rest of the board?
Sorry?
You want to give the name of the rest of the board?
Yeah, I can get that after the meeting. A listing and even a financial update would be very helpful, and a listing of the artifacts. Those, I think, are 3 key pieces.
Hey, Mike, you're in the audience. In the 2nd floor of this building, we have a special place for the artifacts, and they're there right now, correct?
We've got 3 rooms down here with it all secure.
It's all there. It's all secure.
So we do not have actual traffic flow to view the artifacts as we speak.
I hope not.
It's secure. Carrie and I were the keepers of the key.
Who's up the key? Okay.
Okay. We called him Dempster Dumpster back. When this building was abandoned, invaluable thing was from the Dempster Dumpster. And he hauled out a good 1,000 something and saved it for us. So I can't remember his name, but I always remember he was the Dempster Dumpster guy.
Well, I'd like to make a comment. Well, I'll make a comment, but I would like to indicate that I don't think it would be an issue for us to appoint these members to that board where that's going to concern anything. I'd make a motion that we appoint the 3 to the board.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? 4-1. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Number 7, Texas Historical Commission Courthouse Advisory Committee to consider and act upon allowing Mike Head, Potter County Director of Facilities, to serve on the Texas Historical Commission historical. It just sounds funny to say historical.
Yes.
Courthouse Advisory Committee. Mike.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Basically, what I'm presenting today is this program started over 20 years ago when President Bush was governor of the state of Texas. At that time, he established a program in order to preserve and protect the integrity of the historic structures throughout the state and in the county courthouses. And at that time, I was requested to serve on an advisory committee to help kick this program off to get it going. Since then, I've served with the Texas Historic Commission. I classes down there through the courthouse stewardship programs through all these years. So basically, that is when Larry Oaks was the executive director, Stan Grace was the director. Now they've moved on to Mark Book. You may remember from the courthouse, he is now the executive director. And Stan Grace has moved on. So Miss Sharon Clemmy, she is the new director. She's been here for approximately 4 years. The Texas Historic Commission is just not a small organization. It branches out in many different areas. Ms. Ling is in charge of the architectural division.
in order to make sure these programs go through and we preserve the structure. So across the state of Texas, they've been 16 people nominated to serve on this committee. I was fortunate to be able to receive that email the other day that would like me to serve on it. Basically, what we would do is help evaluate the program, help guide the Texas Historic Commission and the other members on what to do, how to award funding for the courthouses. It kind of seemed like this program kind of went stale. You don't hear about it much anymore. The last 2 years, we've seen a lot of changes on the programs that we put on down there. We just don't have enough people coming back down there to help find out how to preserve these structures. So the Texas Historic Commission has informed me that they would defray the cost for me to make these trips to Austin. I'm not sure how often they would be. The first one we have coming up is May the 11th. The per diem that you approved today on the Commissioner's Court vouchers, that was just a projected cost. I'll find out more details about that after this coming Thursday, what the actual cost will be, and the arrangements for me to go to Austin. So we've got this first meeting coming up on the 11th, and then the second week of June is our next meetings, and I'll find out more first how we continue forward. So what I'm asking of you today is please consider and approve me representing Carter County on this Texas Historic Commission Advisory Committee.
I can't think of anybody more fitting than you, Mike.
Certainly, pretty significant to have one mayor that's representing
Mike, do you know how long your term would be?
We're not for sure. We'll find out more. The Historic Commission is like, they approve the members and meet them. This coming Thursday, the 16 people will be presented to the commission. At that time, they will decide. And then I'll receive information on Friday. I spoke with Susan Gaines last Friday, and information for them.
I'm going to have Mike Head as part of the THC.
Second. Okay, have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. 5-0. Thank you, Mike.
That's exciting, Mike. Quite an honor.
Thank you.
Okay, number 8, Law Enforcement Complex, LEC project. To consider and act upon approval to authorize the county purchasing department to proceed with advertising and issuing a request for bid on the landscape of the Old Potter County Sheriff Department Administration Facility. Formal bid number 1159-18. Vicki, Mike, and John. Good morning. Good morning.
Question, is that coffee back there for everybody?
It's for everybody. Yeah, we forgot your, yeah, we forgot your IV this morning, sorry.
All right, well, if Vicki will allow.
Yes, I do have John Kill with PRPC here and Mike Head Facilities, and this agenda item is to allow the purchasing department to proceed with the next steps of process, and these two gentlemen are going to help give some information in regards to that project.
Actually, this is probably the last step that you're going to take with what has been now about a 5-year project when we look at the time that's been spent on planning the work that's been done, on going through the process of issuing $21 million worth of bonds to pay for it, going through all the design phases, all the other work that led up to the new law enforcement center now that has been built for the Sheriff's Department and occupied by the Sheriff's Department, which was celebrated with a ribbon cutting this past March. So now the sheriff and his department are out of the old facility that's downtown, part of the plan, and we've already approved 2/3 of the work was to now demolish that building that the Sheriff's Department wants occupied. So you have approved the work necessary to go through the old building and clear all the asbestos out of that building. You approved the work of tearing down that building. And so with this item, the county staff is recommending that the court authorize the county to go out for bids now for somebody to come in and landscape that facility. So it's not an eyesore downtown. It'll be a fairly simple landscaping initiative because there may be some other plans for that piece of property in the future. But while those decisions are being made, you don't want that just to be a vacant lot with dirt on it. So as you've seen from the information that was provided to you in your agenda packet today, there is a plan there for putting that in a sprinkler system, for siding over the entire lot, and for putting a fence around the lot as well too. So it looks pretty attractive even while you guys are deciding what your next step is going to be. The estimated cost for this work is about $107,000. The cost of which would be paid out of the contingency fund for the project. Mike has done an excellent job in managing those contingency funds. So there's resources there to pay for the cost of this work. As currently planned, probably the best way of doing this is that this work would be started as soon as the old building has been torn down. So there's no lag time there in trying to get some grass back on that space once the building is completely torn down. And that work should be completed sometime in the July, August timeframe, as things are currently planned right now. So the recommendation for the court to consider is authorizing the purchasing department to go out for bids for that work as currently planned. The bids will be submitted back to the county May 21, and they'll present the bids, or will then be presented to you for your consideration on May 29. And with that said, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
John, Mike, can you give us a little more depth detail about the aesthetic look of that after it's demolished and landscaped?
Basically, what you're gonna have is, the property side that's over there, the south asphalt area where the gated area is right now will be removed, because they're gonna tear that up whenever they come in and do the demolition. Then after that, the building will be removed all the way down to 5th Street, so that entire east half city block, we're not touching the sidewalks. We visited with the city of Amarillo. We're not going in and beautifying this right now because they could very well be possible plans in the future to do something there. So they've allowed us to do this as a temporary fix on the property over there coming in. So you just envision seeing grass through the entire half city block. We'll put bollards in every 8 foot across with cables going through there. And so basically, if someone was handicapped and they want to enter onto the property, they would have the capability to do that. We'll have an interior barrier where they can go around. Main thing was we don't want cars parking on it and stuff like that. It will be irrigated as well. We utilize part of the funds that we have on our current grounds maintenance to pick it up once we start the irrigation, and that will just become part of the grounds maintenance over there for that city.
Will the wrought iron fence be taken down?
Yes, sir. It will be removed.
You plan on digging up the parking lot also?
Yes, the asphalt that's there is a chip seal asphalt. It's not very thick. You get this big track goes on and start turning and moving. They're going to tear that asphalt up, and they'll need an area for staging as well. So the asphalt there comes out as well as the street.
I'm talking about the lot on the east side, is that also?
No, the west side of the alley, everything stays the same.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, they're not allowed to go beyond the west side of the alley.
So Mike, the renderings show bulb outs on the
Yes.
corners on Pierce. Is that included?
That's
in
already there.
That's already there.
That one already exists, so that's why we're not touching the sidewalks. We'll come up to the back of the sidewalks to do the work and not going any further.
And you mentioned a fence, and then you mentioned a fence coming down. When the property's done, will it have a fence?
It will have bollards with cables running through it as a barrier to keep people from driving onto the property.
Okay, okay. And how tall will those be?
We'll probably say anywhere 28 to 36 inches.
That's just around the grassy area.
Yeah, just around the grass.
And the $106,000 for the project, you mentioned contingency funds, but that came from the bond proceeds, I'm guessing, right? Okay. So if we chose not to do this, we could potentially put that towards the bond and paying off that debt. That's another option kind of on the table. Is there any reason we didn't pursue tiers number 1 funding for this?
For the landscaping.
Yes, it seems to be, that was part of their funding for the courthouse. Their initiative, their part, it was a fairly small amount in terms of the full 16 million on the courthouse. But I could see this as a potential project fit. This matches some of their priorities in tiers number 1 as it relates to landscaping. No surprise.
It was just for the streetscape, not for the landscaping. So around the courthouse, they just did the sidewalks, not the landscaping. So that's the distinction between these two projects. The streetscape's already there, as Mike indicated, all hours. So I don't think this would have been an appropriate request for the tiers.
Well, they do have in their priorities is looking at new potential green space. And I know that that was a weakness, right, in terms of all the work that's been done so far, looking at new initiatives of green space. I could see, I just want to confirm someone's at least asked tiers, and we're not just seeing it on the surface saying it's not a good fit. I've seen their plan, and to me, it would look like at least a good ask.
I can tell you, because I serve on tiers one, that we don't have $106,000 for projects. We only budget $150 a year, and we've already gone past the $100,000.
But I have seen some fairly creative things done. I'll just say, even as it relates to the LGC, the tiers gave the LGC a loan, if you will, for some of the downtown work, even though that was not in the original budget, if you will. We are the biggest contributor fiscally into the tiers zones.
To this date, we have received the largest amount of money back.
But we are also a government entity. Yeah.
I agree with John. This is a landscape project, not a streetscape.
Just to cover the grounds, the original plan was we were hoping to have something ready to proceed forward with whatever's going to happen with that property, and we didn't get that done. So this is just to put something back, and not just going to be full of weeds. We're going to go to spraying weeds all the time. It's a temporary situation. Regarding the funding that we currently have right now, whenever I put this together, we had probably around $640,000 left in that contingency. So if it's approved today, I'll set that money aside right here, and we'll proceed forward. As we do on any other project, we'll go through and do value engineering on this. Every bids come in to make sure it's in the best interest.
So Judge, and maybe this is a question for you and Mike, as it relates to that property and whatever that future looks like for that property, at the end of the day, these are taxpayer funds that are paying off that debt.
Right.
Is this good use of $106,000 of taxpayer funds?
It is.
Okay.
It is, for the time being, temporarily. I don't want to leave it looking like it's just been hit by a bomb. So we're going to do this temporarily. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, John.
Just a question for our guest. Aren't you just riveted as to what's going on this morning? If any of you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand and we will accept your questions.
And we do have a part at the end of the agenda as well. And don't forget on your tables, we have the little Twitter hashtag. And Brandon, I think I saw him earlier. He always is great about taking those questions and reading them off alongside us.
I move that we approve the authorizing the county purchasing department to proceed with advertising and issuing a request for bid on the landscape of the old Potter County Sheriff Department administration facility.
I would second that.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? 4-1. Thank you. Number 9, SAFER, S-A-F-E-R, to consider and act upon applying for a federal grant and to appoint Pat Fitzpatrick as primary contact. There comes our fire department right there. Richard, thank you so much. Pat, thanks for coming in.
Morning.
Good morning.
The easiest way to explain this is tying back into our strategic planning session meeting where we talked about the addition of personnel for the fire department and looking at bringing on more positions, hopefully in the next budget year. One of the things is they have a grant called Staffing for Adequate Fire and Emergency Response. And what this grant will do is help offset the initial 4 to 5 years of hiring additional personnel. In the grant, the first 2 years, 75% of the salary is covered, plus there's additional money in there for benefits, insurance, and everything else. It's all figured kind of on a curve. This grant is available. The expiration is the end of this month. So in order to plan budget cycle, we went ahead and asked permission to apply for this grant. And hopefully by that time, we will have some kind of advising as to whether or not we'll qualify.
As we continue to grow in the county and with our fire station, would you just kind of give an overlay, a quick overlay to our general public of how many permanent staff you have currently on staff, and then also the volunteers that are a part of the fire?
We are what's considered a combination department. We have 6 stations throughout the county with almost 30 pieces of apparatus. We manage close to 1,700 calls every year with 4 paid personnel. Everybody else is volunteer, which is an additional 75, roughly 75 members that don't get paid to respond. And we provide everything from minor medical calls to major fires throughout the county and the surrounding area. We have automatic mutual aid agreements with just about everybody in the area. So we're generally one of the busier departments in the county.
Richard, do you think that any of the volunteers will apply for this position?
I do have several that are qualified, and we will give preference to people who have already been in our system. One of the things we look at when we hire people is generally you're looking at younger guys that are trying to get their foot in the door to be hired to go somewhere. Generally, when we hire on this department, we'll hire somebody who already has experience in our department, who understands how it works, and somebody who we're looking more for longevity than we are for somebody that we can train on the job. So our volunteers will get preference over a lot of other people.
Chief, I do have a question, just to make sure I'm clear. So this year 1, you're asking for permission to apply for the grant this year in anticipation of the budget coming. Is that right? So in year 1 of this budget, should we approve July, August, September-ish, in your budget, you would have a line item of about $88,000 to offset that 25% that they're not covering in the grant for these positions. And then year 2 and 3, if I'm following the formula right, it jumps to $228,000, year 2 and year 3. Is that the vision? I just want to make sure I'm following the steps financially.
I would have to take my shoes and socks off because I'm not good at that. What I can say is, yes, there's a percentage, and as the longevity comes in, the percentage drops off. And then after the cycle, then you have to be paid 100%.
Is there any thinking to use the new county assistance district fund to offset these salaries?
It does not pay for salaries, only equipment.
Does that clear? It only pays for equipment, Carrie? That was not the intent when it went to the voters. So the fund can pay for salaries, it's just when it went to the voters, the ask was for equipment.
Correct. Exactly.
So the bottom line is, Richard, you need more employees.
We need them one way or the other, and like I said in the meeting, I will try everything I can do to offset that impact on hiring new people.
So in the event that you were going to come to us and ask for 2 employees, which we'd have probably said, this helps you because it pays 75% the first year, correct?
And that's, like I said, that's what I'm trying to do is help any way I can. The fact of the matter is we're going to have to do something. We're going to have to hire people, or we're going to have to decide what services we're no longer going to provide. And in doing that, this helps offset that impact to basically the taxpayers who are paying the money for these people to be
the 352,000 is spread over 3 years. Is that right?
That's the total cost for the 2 employees for the 3 years.
For the 3
Right.
years, okay.
3,500 salary plus 20,190 benefits for each person. You're going for 2. So it's approximately a little over 115,000 a year.
And the grant will pay 75% of that the first 2 years.
Right.
And
So it's not the 88,000.
Years 1 and 2, the county would need to fund $29,345. Year 3, the county would need to fund $76,300. And then year 4, it would be the full $352,000. And keep in mind, I don't know, we didn't really discuss command vehicles. I don't know if those would be necessary, but that's something else the court may want to consider.
And you're not asking for vehicles.
I might say that the fire department is doing some unbelievable things with 4 paid employees. Every fire, every medical call that goes out, one of those paid employees has to go out with it. And so we're on them because they have comp time built up and overtime. So if we can help them out for $29,000 a year, I think this is a good investment. Good motion. I would move that we approve the application for a federal grant to appoint Pat Fitzpatrick as the primary contact with Safer Home.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. 5-0. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you all very much.
Number 10, Local Government Corporation, your update on the Local Government Corporation.
We met April 18th last week for a regularly LGC meeting. Couple of things, I'll just do a quick update. We did get a financial statement recap, so I brought that with me. If anyone would like to look at that, any member of the court or anyone in the audience, I've got the financial statements that were provided to the LGC. Where I'll spend my time is really as it relates to the project updates. No surprise, a lot of the updates are as it relates to the multi-purpose event venue, the MPEV or the ball field. It's called many different things. But that the grade has been established. The building pad along the first baseline has been completed. Drainage has started. And their goal as it relates to drainage was that they could drain that entire property within 30 minutes if we've ever hit a 100-year flood. That's often a word that you hear as you're looking at infrastructures. What would it take from a drainage perspective? So they're working on that grade. You can visually see that change as you're driving alongside for that property to come up. That was the big update as it related to the MPEV. There also was an announcement last week. I think there was a press release that the ball team held in terms of who would name the team coming. So that press release happened to follow up of this meeting. And then the only other thing, a couple of just discussion items that we had as it relates to the Revenue Enhancement Committee. And so this is a topic that I brought to the court quite some time ago. This is really a small committee to look at different ways to use that parking garage, especially as it relates to the MPEV that will stand up alongside it. That third floor is an interesting kind of venue. Once it came up and you could see the full 360 view of the city, how that could be used, whether it was for, wedding parties, renting it out for different events. So there's a committee. I brought that to this court to ask for any potential appointees. All of those members that you have presented have gone to William Biggs. He's the chair of this particular subcommittee. If you have anyone else, please just know that's on the table. We're kind of in a housekeeping state trying to get that committee, the first meeting established, making sure they're willing to serve, all those good things. The other thing that I think is kind of interesting, there was quite a bit of discussion on the LGC as it relates to what's called temporary signage. So if you'll just think of the parking garage in that first floor right now that are just empty windows, right? Who's gonna go in that and who's gonna use that retail space? There was discussion on using signage, and the way I think about it is the wraparounds. I'm sure that's not the official marketing term, but the wraparounds that go around the windows. I think that's something that the Perry Williams project used quite a bit out there, where it would have an image of someone eating in it, trying to show what could happen in that property. So the LGC's not taking formal approval, but they're bringing renderings of what those could look like. So that may be a different kind of experience as you're walking along or driving along the parking garage. There is some thinking around trying to do signage. I'm not sure that 100% of the LGC is on board with that. There's some discussion on whether that's good use of dollars, because the idea is that that is rented and you don't need those things. But I think it's timing and when that the MPEV will actually go up. So those are really kind of the biggies that were covered at the LGC. And then my final item is the next meeting date is May 16th. We meet at 11:30 at City Hall in room 306. I'm happy to answer any questions.
We've had some great weather as far as the ball park.
Yes.
Where are we on the timeline of that?
Yeah, Jerry is the key point person on that project with the city, and he indicated that they are ahead of schedule. They've been using the lack of rain, which hasn't been a good thing for everyone else, but the lack of rain to get ahead of that project. They were anticipating the little rain that we got over the weekend, but even with that, they said they were well ahead of schedule and are definitely trying to take the days as they have them, because as we know in Amarillo, the weather changes quickly. So they're reporting on all fronts ahead of schedule and trying to use weather where they've got it, and you'll see quite a bit of activity. I didn't write the stat, but it was interesting the amount of dirt that they excavated from that. He gave us the truckloads, and I should have written that down, but the amount of trucks that left the property. And then we're getting ready to see some streets changing and closing off as they get closer to that full footprint.
Will you give us a date for the audience as far as the timeline of completion?
19, right? The first game will be in 2019. That's the plan, that all of that build work would happen here. Their season would start here in April of 2019. And there is an email out there, if anyone's interested, on the LGC. We have our minutes on the City Hall's website. And not this meeting, but the one previously, we had a representative from the ball team there with an email address for anyone that wanted tickets before they go on general release sale. So if anyone's interested in this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Number 11, Potter County projects. To hear a report on various Potter County projects and take any action necessary. Mike.
Okay, first one is the law enforcement center project that are going to go over into the last phase, being the landscaping over there. Regarding the building, we completed all the punch list on the building, generated the fourth one yesterday, presented it to architects that they will be giving it to the general contractor. As we stand right now, we have not issued the substantial completion letters in the vehicle maintenance garage or the law enforcement center. Due to some punch list items. Hopefully that'll be corrected and addressed this week before we can get that out there. On the law enforcement center right now, we have over 70 items still pending on the interior of the building. These are things that the general contractor is aware of that they need to come through and correct. This does not include anything on the exterior for y'all that's been out there and seen the building within the last 3 or 4 weeks. Basically, the entire front of the building has been completely off. Resident notice is currently in the process to correct all of that. The window leakage that we had on the building on the main front foyer out there, it fell again last week. So we're in the process now of removing all of those windows to make sure they get that correct. The site, we look for it to be completed somewhere around probably the latter part of July and through August, and then that will be the end of the project. So basically, that'll be a timing issue with this downtown. Hopefully, we can conclude everything around the 1st of August. A couple of the projects that will be forthcoming, I'll each chance I get, I'll keep you, or make you aware of where we stand on this. Excel Energy. I've been visiting with them. We started this back, we moved in the building back in August of 2000. Shortly after that, the transformers that feed this building, we had some issues. There's two of them. We lost one of them. Excel wanted Water County to pay them $30-something thousand to come in and remove their equipment from our building and put in new. At that time, I did bring it to the Commissioner's Court, and y'all decided not to proceed forward with that. So at this time right now, we just have one transformer that feeds this building. We're on a network that feeds up and down the Post Street area here. I got a phone call last week from Excel Energy. They now have the money. They're going to pay to remove the transformers from the building. We'll have to work closely with them. Currently, right now, when you leave the building and you head toward the parking lot, you're walking you walk on top of the basement out there. Underneath that basement is where the transformers are located. So we'll be working with them to get the transformers set on the exterior of the building, on the west side of the alley, and they'll be running the power supplies back and forth across. I did ask for any cost, what we should be concerned about for Potter County at this time. There's not any. We start the meetings here within about probably 2.5 to 3 weeks with them to get the game plan and see how we're going to move forward with this. And like I made the word last week, if there are any costs for Potter County, I'll bring to y'all and do budget restraints. It may become an issue, but I'm pretty sure they'll be put in most of it. The last one is the Santa Fe building. Y'all remember the May 2013 hailstorms that we had on this building? We put a complete new roof on this entire structure here. It was declared an emergency due to the height of the roof. Received notification here not long ago. Nicholas was under involved in the roofs inspecting them. Up on the 13th floor, we had some roof membrane coming up there. At that time, he notified a local contractor. We got the GAF representative out here. They're the ones that warranted this roof. As it stands right now, I've got a meeting with him next week. We'll go through and we'll look at everything. We believe that they're going to pay to replace this roof, and hopefully there's no damage beneath the roof because the concrete deck is wet. We'll make you aware of where that issue goes. And that's all, unless y'all have any questions.
Mike, what is the timeline on finishing the roof if they have to replace it?
That's been a major concern due to the event that we have scheduled up there. If that roof membrane was to come off, will not be an issue to be walking on concrete. The roof membrane up here is totally different from what we have. It's a direct adhere to the concrete. It does not have isolation or polyisolation underneath it. So we have a meeting tomorrow morning with over the edge people. They'll be here at 10 a.m. I'll walk them through the building, show them the areas. We'll go through and look at it. I do have to make them aware, either before or after the event, that we are doing some roof work.
Okay, Mike, as it relates to the law enforcement building, how is IT going? I don't know if you want to speak to that or Brandon. I'm just thinking of all of the infrastructure that's being moved in there. Is there an update?
The IT department, David, you want to speak?
Most of the stuff we're getting finished up. They're getting PCs put in. Most everybody's moved out there already. So other than like we have a fire panel that's kind of finished the DC related, ties back into dispatch.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Brandon. Number 12, the jail report. We have 540 people in our jail this morning. 84 of those are female. 462 are felons. 86% is the count here for the felony cases. 52 people are here on misdemeanor charges. That's 10% of the population. Number 13, county insurance items. Is there anything?
Yes, I do have one. We had a 2017 Tahoe that was involved in an accident with another vehicle. The other car was going the wrong way, and so that is being processed as we speak. So getting that vehicle. Hopefully, it's not going to be full loss at this point. Right now, it's 42% damage. So.
The guy going the wrong way is one of the members in the jail, I'm sure.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Is everyone okay?
Yes. Okay. There's no executive session agenda items for next time. about? Okay. So if there is nothing else, we are adjourned, but I want you to stay seated right where you are because there's more to come. I want all the people that are on the committee for this to stand up, please. I want to personally thank all of you for everything. Yeah, we can do that in a second. Yeah.
So I'd also like to recognize the school sponsors that are taking time out of their day to help facilitate this. So at Amarillo High, I've got Sarah Hudson. At Bushland High, I've got Brandon Johnson. Caprock High School, I've got Stacy Barnes and Jason. Do I see? Oh, I see. Highland Park, I've got Kim Lee. Colorado, I've got Katie Cox. Rachel Freeman. That's not Rachel, but yeah. Tell us your name, sir. Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. Tascosa, I've got Tyler. Tyler was here last year. I remember Tyler. Holy Cross, Angie. I know I'm going to say your last name wrong, Angie.
She's not here.
She's not here. Okay.
Philip Way.
Philip, thank you very much for joining us. And then San Jacinto, I've got Jay. Jay Langan. That looks like just a first initial. Yes, thank you. I think that's everyone. I hope I didn't miss anyone. Nope. Okay. All right.
Thank you, everybody. Okay, now we have our IT guys here with his department. You have something on your desk, on your tables that shows you how to tweet a question, or you can come to the podium and ask. So if there's any questions, feel free to step up.
Katie, do you have anything on the Twitter feed yet for questions? Nothing yet? No one has any questions? Usually you guys have quite a few questions. Did everyone sleep? Is that what happened? Everyone did. And we have a mic that we can hand around if that's easier to go to you. There we go. Good job. Way to be a leader. Taking the first steps.
I appreciate your concern with downtown and the railroad thing. Mr. Bolton was talking, he mentioned that he was willing to put 10% more purchase in the engineering quote. And then the city purchased that building for a lot more than that. The previous owner of that building was Mr. Gordon, and he purchased it for $250,000 from the city. And then the city bought it back for $3 million. I'm concerned that that's kind of wasteful, and we're concerned that the $6 million that he was wanting to put into it, I felt like it was better to have it in his private hands, or if we do what we wish with it. What are your thoughts on that?
Who wants to answer that?
I think that's an important call out, right? Because that really is something that is frustrating when you're watching this process. When you know the value of the property, you see it exchanged hands multiple times, and I definitely don't want to speak for the city. It's their property and it's their lane. But I saw that they are taking action to start to look at a committee about what to do with that property. I don't think anybody negates the historical significance of that property. Potter County is in a spot where we have a lot of historic buildings as well. This one that you're in right now, and just the amount of money to maintain historic buildings, you'd be shocked, right? I mean, just things we don't even think about, the paints, the roof, I mean, just things are so expensive. Even the rotating doors that you potentially came through this morning, those were $750,000 if I remember correctly, many years ago. I think that's an important call out, and is that the right way to be exchanging hands, and what is the vision when you buy these properties? I know that it's probably not for us to answer that. That would be a city question, would be my guess. But I do think that's an important question. And as I'm in various committees, everyone is hungry for where are our young leaders. Everyone is asking this question. Where are the young leaders on all of these subcommittees? So when you see these things, whether it's in the media or you hear us talk about these subcommittees, if you have a passion to join that and ask those questions, I can tell you people would welcome that with open hands, because everyone is asking where are our young leaders, because it's your generation that's going to have to live with this debt, and it's your generation that's going to have to live with the future plans of that.
Let me just give you a little bit of more background, and I think I may have been the only one. The county attempted to buy that depot. We wanted to buy that depot. The county judge had a stroke and was unable to convey his feelings for that. And then the city turned around and bought it immediately for, I think, a $3 billion tag. And so this is in their court. They bought this. Every piece of property, real estate or non, the value goes up every year. This building, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, it costs about $400,000 a year to maintain this building. So you can imagine what it would cost just a unit smaller. The cost keeps going up and up and up. So what they decided to do with that, Mr. Wolfram's got a great idea to make the museum, and I think the city's going to go along with it. And they've actually given him their blessing on it. So.
Good question. Anything else? Thank you.
Anybody else?
That's a tough question too. Right over here to the left.
Okay.
I think I can speak. Can y'all hear me all right? I don't want to get too far in the future, but just plans for the Potter County Memorial Stadium. I know that's been an issue that y'all dealt with a lot over the past couple of years. With the new baseball stadium coming to downtown Amarillo, do y'all have any early initial ideas? I know that property is pretty valuable, and it's definitely during certain times of the year with the Amarillo National building over there, it's definitely a piece of property that's.
Well, as you know, the San Jacinto Christian Academy is using it for their baseball team, and for some few other events. And if anybody's here from San Jacinto, they can relate to that too. There are plans, but I am not able to divulge those plans at this time for the stadium. We're not going to let it just sit there. We're not going to tear it down. So we know that it's a factor we need to look at, and we are looking at that. So thank you for that question.
One thing I would add to that, Judge, an interesting part of that footprint that maybe people know, maybe they don't know, as it relates to the whole land, Potter County owns that whole footprint except for Dick Bivens, which think of it like the circle right in the middle of that land and a small piece of parking that the school district owns. So if you think about the fairground property, just really with a rectangular shape and that small circle, Dick Bivens, that sits on top of it, that you guys go watch football games, your school district owns that, and that small parking, but all the rest is owned by Potter County. And most people don't know that structure. There also is a piece of that property that I learned used to be the old Amarillo High practice football field that now is the tree farm. You see it behind fences. That is owned by AISD. So it's kind of an unusual property ownership structure for that. Kind of a fun fact on that property.
Anything else?
And I think we're also looking for input and industry from the public too as well in developing this plan.
I have a couple questions for Jordan. I'll read these together because they kind of go hand in hand. Where does the county funds come from? And what is tier funding? Which is always a popular question.
Where county funds come from, or what is tiers funding?
Most of our county money that comes to run our general fund comes from property taxes. In Potter County, it's 0.66 cents per $100 value. So that's where the largest majority of the funds come from to fund our general funds, which You know, that takes care of our courts, our sheriff's department, our fire department, all the other departments, our records, our clerks, you name it, county attorneys. So that's where that money comes from. That's kind of a large issue right now on the state level. They're trying to, they want to tell the counties how high they can raise those property taxes each year. We think that the best government is local government. And we don't think Austin ought to tell all the 254 counties how to do their business. So it's a hot issue, and you'll hear a lot more about property taxes during the next coming year. Speaking of fire, give me some more corn. Tiers, that is tax increment reinvestment zone. And what that is, there's actually two zones now. There's a Tiers 1, which is the downtown area, and then there's a Tiers 2, which is a corridor out on East Amarillo, takes in the Big Texan, some of that area along I-40. But what it does is in 2006, I believe, is when it was established. It was set up for a 30-year period, and in 2006, they set that as the base level of taxation. As property values increase, as new construction comes in, that increment between the 2006 level and what the taxable value is now, that money comes into the county, but we return that increment back to a Tiers board. Now, the Tiers board decides how that money is to be used. A lot of the new businesses, let's say Tootin' Totem downtown, Excel Energy, the refurbished Herring Bank, there's about 5 or 6 others that have come to the Tiers board and asked to get some of that money, that tax money that they paid, back. And so up to this point, the Tiers board has given back 90% of that increment. Well, we're now at, I think 18 years is all that's left in that 30-year. So they don't get a 30-year deal. We're looking at different ways to give back that increment. But anyway, it's actually their tax money they paid in. It's that increment between the 2006 level and what it is now. And that's where that increment money comes from.
Any other questions? Yeah.
One of the, you've heard that there's certain things that the Tiers was focused on doing with this money. And one is to encourage private businesses to come downtown and develop downtown. But there was also 3 main projects they wanted to get done. And those projects were the hotel, which is done, the parking garage, which is done, and the MPEV, which is being built now. And those are the 3 cornerstones, so to speak, projects in order to make downtown viable to bring more business in.
We're watching our next elected official, because we don't know that yet.
As you address the revitalizing downtown, I think it's a great idea. I'm a personal advocate for homeless. And I realize that this city and county issue and even a local issue, but there is a large homeless population downtown. Speaking out of the budget today, what resources does Hardin County provide for the homeless, and how are you taking homeless into consideration how you are trying to bring that downtown to what it is. We have to realize there's almost an invisible population that you can't ignore on.
Does anybody else want to address that? We'll say that in the jail. Okay, I have a couple of things. Okay, in the jail. Go ahead, if anybody wants to talk about that.
Well, first of all, Amarillo is probably one of the, for a city its size, has more facilities and programs for homeless in the city, of course, of its size. If you will look into all of the homeless shelters we have, who supports those, Potter County itself does not give money to those, but many of our churches, many of our organizations in town, the Faith City Mission, we have Salvation Army, there is meals that anyone can get every day. All they have to do is go to these places. Many of the folks that are homeless, first of all, don't want to go to those shelters because they have to be clean to get money. In other words, they have to be off of their drugs or whatever. Many of them have a mental illness. And if you'll ask our sheriff, our detention center is the largest mental facility, of course, in the county. And we serve those people that we have to take in because of the actions that they take.
And I think that that's exactly correct, what Commissioner alluded. The city has indicated that they have enough facilities, housing, to provide that to every homeless individual that resides in Amarillo. They've done an account of that, but as the Commissioner indicated, there are certain reasons why some of those individuals do not want to be in a infrastructure type shelter. But the city, along with other individuals within the county, not the county per se, but there are many of us that are work for the county or working with those various organizations, the city being one, to come up with some creative ideas to work along with individuals. So it's not an issue that is gone unnoticed. It is an issue that is certainly not resigned to Amarillo or Potter County proper. It's all over the nation. But we continue to work hard to work with those individuals and the various organizations to help in any way possible that we can.
Thank you.
Question. I saw a couple hands, but they were just up, and then there we go. Okay. Stretch.
Another one on Twitter says, how much should we expand different public services, such as the fire department, and how much of a need is there to expand others?
So I couldn't understand that, you know.
Can you read it one more time?
Need is to expand public service like the fire department.
Right, just asking the need to expand county services, and what are some of the others, other than the fire department, that need to be expanded?
So I would say that is the ultimate question, because the need is always greater than the funds. And that's what makes our job so challenging, is because everyone needs, and rightfully so, we need the fire department to be strong and healthy and be able to fight these fires that can get out of control very quickly because of our conditions and our terrain. And we need the police, the sheriff department to be able to work hand in hand with the city. Obviously, we have a footprint of the county in the city to be able to work hand in hand and be able to protect the county. And we need a jail that's adequate enough to handle the inmates that are in that jail. There's a lot of discussion in all departments. Everyone needs. That is never the question. The question is, how do we discern all of the needs and say who goes first, right, and in what order? And it is very hard. And today was one glimpse of that. But during budget, it's a very stressful, emotional process, not only for the departments, but for each of us that are charged to help discern. We don't always agree. And that's part of what you see up here as well, is we have a different kind of thinking of what order things should go in. I think as a general sense, we all have agreement that we need to continue to move. One of the things that the county is in the middle of finishing up is a strategic plan, which sounds like something we should already kind of have, right, in our back pocket. And we do informally, but we've gone through a process over the last year to go through a formal strategic plan to start to look at how do we start to prioritize and look past 1 year, which is our budget year, and look into year 2, year 3, year 5, year 10. Some of those seeds that we're planting will supersede each one of us. We are elected in 4-year terms, and we will move, right? We will continue to move off of this commissioner's court. And so we hopefully are planting seeds to help guide future commissioner's court, because that is a very tough question. And it happens mainly during budget, but it changes. Sometimes the needs change. Something might dramatically happen to a fire truck out there in the field. That's a very different need that we didn't anticipate. We try to slow down how often. You can't control that situation, but we obviously don't want lots of things to change during budget, because we're having to pull from funds that we didn't have allocated.
The bottom line is that this court, along with all the departments and within this county, are working very aggressively and proactively and creatively to look outside of the box and see what we can do as far as what Commissioner articulated, to do within the best interest of all the citizens of this county, and we're looking out in a very global perspective.
Any other questions? So one question we normally get, but we didn't get today, is what is a commissioner's court? And how are you guys up there? How are you elected? Who do you really serve?
And how the voting works.
And how the voting works, right? So that's normally a question we get. I'll take the first part of it and then maybe just pass it along if I may, Judge. So your commissioner's court is comprised of 5 members. Commissioner Kelly, myself, Judge Tanner, Commissioner Church, and Commissioner Alfonso Vaughn. And we are elected in precincts. Some people call those districts. You can think of them like quadrants, if you will, so in different sections of the county. Often county government is described as the closest arm to the people, because we live in that area. We live in that precinct. You have to live there to represent the area. Very different than like your city council. Everyone's elected at large. So we live in the area that we serve. That's what the precinct numbers mean. So my footprint is predominantly east and northeast Amarillo. Some fun facts about precinct 2 in particular is 100% of my precinct is in the city, which is very different than a county commissioner that you think about, like roads and fire trucks, and all those things are very important. But obviously I'm watching what that city council is doing very closely. The old and the new baseball stadium are in precinct 2. The 3 big downtown projects are in precinct 2. So there's a lot of interaction that's happening right now on the city scale, so that we stay hand in hand. And I bring a lot of those updates to this commissioner's court. But we are elected in 4-year terms. I've been in office now 6.5 years, and I'm on the ballot again, unopposed, happily to say that. And I think that's it. Those are the high points I wanted to point out.
I'm the only one who's not elected by precinct. I'm for the whole county. The other commissioners are all elected where they live. They have to live in the precinct in which they run. And so, Commissioner... Yeah. Church, he just got reelected 2 years ago. You don't have, Scott, he just got reelected a year ago. And I are not opposed. I dare anybody to oppose us.
Yeah,
I'm kidding.
And Commissioner Kelly just got elected also.
Yeah, he did. So out of the whole process, Commissioner Court, I'm the only one who runs countywide. The rest of them are precincts.
Well, we also have 4-year terms.
Judge Tanner was the first woman on the ballot for Potter County as a judge and won. So that was exciting.
That was very exciting.
Yeah.
He is still.
Yes.
One of the questions that goes along with this topic is, what is the time commitment for a county commissioner? So I think aside from just the term that you serve, the time that you put in every day.
speak up for that one at this time.
What's the
What's the time commitment for a commissioner?
Well, it's kind of varies because we're all on committee. We all are, we do a lot of extra stuff that people are not aware of, especially meetings that we must attend. And, we actually are joyful to attend one, right?
Right, yes.
So it's just not a twice a month meeting that we have. We do lots of other meetings. As tiered board member here, Murphy's on several boards. We all are. A lot of extra time.
Another question.
Somehow.
Is the question of how long have you been commissioners? How long
have you been in office? Sorry.
Probably too long to some folks, but now this is my third term, finishing up in 3 years. I'll run again, but hopefully none of you will run in precinct 1 in case I run again.
I'm finishing up my third term. I've just been in the process of bringing in the November ballot unopposed, so I will start my fourth term, and I'm the senior member on the board.
In a prestigious way, senior member.
No, I'm the senior member.
I am starting my 6th year. I'm in my 2nd term. Who knows what'll happen in another 2.5 years. But I'd just like to say, when you're talking about time, somehow my cell phone has gone down. And I represent all the rural parts of Potter County. Everything west of Poulter, basically kind of jogs around, but I have northwest, the city of Amarillo, northwest corner, and then it goes along Hastings all the way to the lakeside, and then everything east and north. So all the rural parts of the county. So anybody that has a road problem seems to know how to get a hold of me. And that's a big issue here in Potter County, because as Bushland continues to grow out there, they are part of the unincorporated part of Potter County. So we get a lot of requests for drainage problems, road problems, and so, I don't know if we don't have an office hour that people can get a hold of me.
And Commissioner, if you'll speak to us about the program that we're involved in as far as the county and the city and the partnering with various sectors of this city/county, and we work together on a number of different issues. So speak to me about that.
Yeah, so there's a key idea, a key initiative that started a couple years ago. You may have heard of it in the media, called just the neighborhood plan. And so this was really started by the county, and we took a small amount to the city and said, help us match this, and let's do a strategic plan, in particular for the neighborhoods that don't get a lot of attention, right? That don't have a lot of economic development going on. They're always the neighborhoods that we get questions on as it relates to alleys, dumpsters, roads, lights, like you name it. So the city matched that. We're now several years in, and we've just officially completed 2 particular neighborhoods. The first one was the North Heights area, close by the PD cluster. The second is the Barrio area. That one was just finished right here in East Amarillo. And then the next to go will be San Jacinto and Eastridge. And so one of the things that I think is interesting about that plan is when it's done, when it's adopted by the city council, and the city just finished the Barrio, which was the second one last Tuesday. When it's adopted and it's done, it becomes part of the city's comprehensive plan. It becomes an attachment or an addendum to that, which means it can't be a plan that's just put on the shelf and that changes as the people change and as we change, right? They have to look at it every budget year, because you can have a plan, but if you don't have any dollars tied to it or anybody owning that, it's just that plan, right? So that has been very exciting to see it unfold. I will tell you, the needs are great. Just like we talked about the question earlier, the needs always supersede the dollars, but the fact that we have it all documented, this came from the ground up, from the committee members, many of those who live in that area, about how they see their community growing in the city. So I think that was an important conversation because it took a city and a county lens outside of downtown, right? A lot of focus on downtown, and rightfully so. So it took that lens and it started to shift the conversation to the neighborhoods. This is not a net new idea for cities or counties. There are many cities and counties that do this all over the country, but it was new for Amarillo, and it was new to get that off the ground. So the city really kind of owns that and runs that. I serve on that committee. Judge Tanner sits alongside me. Commissioner Vaughn supports when she's not able to join, and it has turned into a really good initiative, really a strong pillar, I would say, of what the city is reporting out from the community perspective. But again, I go back to the question that keeps getting asked on those committees is, where are our young leaders? Because you guys are gonna have to live with these decisions that are in these plans. So even if it's just you coming to these meetings and not really knowing the questions to ask, but participating, everyone is asking that question. So I challenge you on anything that you've heard today, if you just say, well, that sounds interesting, or I just like to learn and listen. There are several in college, in particular at AC and WT, I know there are government teachers that part of their curriculum is they send the students to a public meeting. So anytime you'll see them, we always joke, the mayor joked about this at the last couple meetings, is you could tell it was getting close to the end of the semester because everyone needed to get their form signed that they attended the public meeting. But be a part of that process. You can watch all of this online. There are so many avenues, but it is your generation that has to live with these decisions. So I encourage you to be involved because everybody is looking for where you're at and how to get you at the table.
Are these public meetings?
Yes, they're public meetings. Everything we do is in the public, being recorded on the mic. It's being recorded, and the video is actually recorded. The city meetings are all public, same structure. Your school board meetings, all public. You guys are in the school system, so absolutely be advocating for yourself. I think what most people miss is at every public meeting, there is a public comment section, which is very nerve-wracking because you do got to come up to the podium. The rules are a little different on each governing body, but for the most part, everybody has about 3 minutes. Use that public comment section. If it's not on the posted agenda, the board, whoever that is, whether it's the commission or the city or the school board, they can't really respond to you because it's not on their agenda to take action and respond. But 3 minutes is a long time to say what you need to say, something that is concerning you. So you can use that time and use that platform. You guys are on the front lines and in the schools, and you're leaders in the schools. That's why you're here in these chairs. Use that time to speak for other people, whatever that is, whether it's on the city side, really good comments that you're asking to the young man. That's definitely appropriate for some public comments. And it really makes people notice that, wow, this young leader took time to come and speak their piece. It's different. We don't hear from enough of you. So I promise people notice when you're there.
And let me emphasize, because you, as what Commissioner is indicating, you live in an area very unique that all the public and private and corporate entities allow these comments from the public, and in fact, they encourage them. And there are a lot of different jurisdictions throughout this state that do not. So as we openly allow and encourage you to participate, and certainly in civics, that seems to be a sort of a waning apparatus as far as being involved in. This right here, you get on the front line and be able to participate and encourage to do so. So as Commissioner McGill was indicating, we encourage you to do that, and from all different public and corporate and private entities.
Yeah, one question is about how the book operates. One of the questions is, how do you get a agenda item? How do you get an item on the agenda for Commissioner's Court?
I'll take that one. The agenda items are typically sent to my office. My secretary puts them on there according to how it's worded and who put it on there. She puts their name after it. So on the agenda, you'll see someone's name after it. She puts their name because they submitted that item for the agenda. and then we get it all together, and she posts it with the, where it's supposed to be posted in the courthouse, and she sends it to all the media and whoever else needs to get a copy of it.
So Judge, let me go a little bit further that, who can, within the county, who can submit a request for an agenda item, and how does that process work?
Who can?
Yes.
You're asking me? Pretty much anybody can. I think the public doesn't realize that they can, but they have to go through a committee member or a commissioner in order to get something on the agenda. For the most part, it's typically elected officials, department heads who put something on the agenda. Occasionally, we'll have a private citizen ask for it, but they have to go through someone on the court.
Should relate to county business.
Absolutely, it has to relate to county business, yes.
As a commissioner, what is the most difficult issue or situation that you have dealt with?
Budget.
The budget. That's what I was gonna say. That's coming up. Within the next few months, we'll have to.
That is so difficult because, as all of the commissioner and all the judges are all very related, that there are so many needs within our county structures and you know, valid needs, but there's just so much money to go around. So that's very difficult to line that out and try to afford the opportunity for those departments.
And I would say, I would echo budget, but I would really say voting is one of the most difficult things that we run up against. The lack of voting is probably what I would say. Because these are really important decisions for the future, and you would be shocked at the number of people that do not vote. And they don't know they're elected officials, right? They don't know to pick up the phone. I didn't know. I was one of those people before I ran for office. And that was one of the things I was trying to decide and say, well, what do they even do? And how much time do you spend? And once I started to look at the numbers, it is astonishing how few people vote. And when you break it down by years, how old we are, I'm 38, and my generation is not the percentile of the high voters, right? It's typically 55 and older that are your voters. So when you think about debt and you think about planning and future, and so you kind of just take that down, right? Take that down to the 18-year-old, the 20-year-old, you know, I've referenced kind of 30-year range. The numbers drop significantly. Like when people say, your one vote matters, it really does, because there are so few people that vote. There's a lot of things Texas does great. Voting is not one of them. Depending on what survey you look at, we are 49th, 50th in terms of voter turnout, like at the bottom of the barrel, right? So there are a lot of things we need to be doing to encourage people to go. A lot of my work in the community is encouraging people to go vote. I know that there's a segment of the population that just doesn't care, right? That's always the answer I get is, well, Commissioner, they just don't care. They're not interested. And there is a piece of that, but what I find the most is people don't know it's time to vote and don't know where to go vote, which sounds crazy because the answer I get, well, it's in the newspaper. Well, we're not the generation that reads the newspaper anymore, right? I mean, you might get it online, you might get an alert on your app, you might be looking on Snapchat to see the latest updates, whatever, wherever you get your information. Social media is obviously a heavy presence with how you know your information. And whether it's all right or not right, and that's a discussion for a different day, but the amount, or the lack of people that actually turn out to the polls and that have so much power and putting people in positions to decide these heavy, big things is astonishing. So I hope that if you're 18, you go vote, but your parents are voting, your cousins are voting, your families are voting, because it is scary how few people actually go. That's probably the biggest thing I feel with amongst many.
Is that it?
No, I can keep going, Commissioner, if you got something.
The one thing I'd say about voting is if you're going to go vote, learn what's going on. Don't just go vote and start marking down because it has a D on it or an R on it. Know what you're voting for. And if you're going to go vote, just just to vote, I think that's wrong. Anyway, most difficult thing, I want to answer a little differently. One of the first calls I received when I became a commissioner was from a lady in Valley de Oro. If you all know where that's at, it's quite a few miles north and west of town. And her husband had a heart attack. And she called for an ambulance. And you know, it takes a little while to get out there. So the Boys Ranch ambulance responded. And of course, by the time they got there and got into town, he was dead. Anyway, their request was, can't we do something with Boys Ranch to get them, because they wanted us then to pay for that run. But that's not who we have our ambulance service with. We use the same ambulance service that the city of Amarillo has. And so that's tough when you have to tell people, no, we can't do something that you know. I don't think any of us get into this that don't want to help people. And so, you know, those are the kinds of things that are difficult for me.
So you're talking about the lower voter turnout, especially for our generation. I think part of that problem is a lesson for me in the MLI public school when I go on. Government is a senior class taught one semester. And it's a lot of information at once. And it's literally just nearly regurgitation. Where I would fully to understand and enjoy what goes on with the local government and the national government. So I have to educate myself through outside resources. I hear them too. I guess my question and comment was to increase voter turnout and presentation. I've followed several senators through Facebook and Twitter. Do you have social media handles that we can follow to keep up with the city commissioners are doing? And how are you using social media as a platform to increase voter turnout for the young generation?
I think where that becomes challenging, so to answer that kind of on the surface is no, there's not like a formal movement to educate on social media. I think everyone kind of has a flavor of what they like to do, but not a formal movement locally that I know of. I think when you get to that lens, that's when parties come into play, right? Wherever you sit in terms of whatever party you believe in. We do run on a ticket. We are party affiliated. So I think why people tend to shy away from a formalized process is, what's that message going to be? Because the message should be individually driven, but a lot of times it is party driven, right? And who is the one ultimately responsible for publishing that post or writing that tweet, right? Or whatever the platform is. So I think that's why that really hasn't taken off. That's my own opinion. But I would say in terms of how to increase, education is a big driver. That is a statistic that is held true over time. The more educated you are, the more likely that you will be a voter in your lifetime. So obviously education is the key to a lot of things, breaking out of poverty, all of those things, but voting is one of those pieces. The other thing I would say is that's why a day like today is so important. This is our 5th year of doing this. I'm a big believer that I have to learn, I have to touch it, I have to see it, I have to like interact in it, and I can read about it all day long, but until I've experienced something that day that I can take home with me, then I can interpret that differently. So today, you're starting your day with the Commissioner's Court and the governing body, right? From an administrative lens, we are your fiscal agent, so we're in charge of the purse strings. Where the money goes matters a lot of the overall policy. But throughout the day, you're also going to get to see one of our district judges in action, and you're going to see a live trial. You're also going to get to see one of our justice of the peace judges. We're also going to visit with Scott Brumley, our county attorney. So all of those things are to give you a lens. And Terry, is Terry back? Yes, there's Terry back there. You're gonna get an inside lens of what does it look like. And hopefully you take away a couple of things. A, I need to vote. B, I need to be involved somehow. And C, if you're not asking these questions for your generation, then who is, right? So those would be kind of my comments back, if that helps.
A couple more questions about what it's like to be a commissioner. How many terms can you be elected for? What is the process of getting elected? And what are the qualifications?
The number of terms, this is kind of a joke, I'm sorry. I had to give it out. It has to do with illness and fatigue. It's when your voters get
When you die, is that
sick and tired. But
there's no limit.
there's no limit at how many terms you can run. And what was the rest of that? Oh, qualifications. You have to be an elected, or not elected, you have to be a registered voter, you have to live within the state, and you have to be
18 years or older.
18, yes.
And not a felon. I think I'm thinking the fourth thing that's important. Don't get in trouble. Yeah, but
And you
really,
should have the desire and the passion to serve those that are in your community or your constituents. And it goes across. We talk about precincts and districts, but I think it goes across those precincts.
Oh, I agree.
Because I may be elected from precinct 4, but I certainly have an empathy and concern and want to work with Commissioner Church and each one of the members on this court. So it just doesn't just relegate it to those precincts. You have to have really a desire and interest and a passion, because there are a lot of things that are ongoing and that you bring to us and that we see through planning and the like that we need to be involved in. So you definitely have to have that.
and I would say there is no formal training, right? Like you don't have to have a certificate, you don't have to have any type of credentials outside of those 4 things to put your name on the ballot. Now, once you're elected, you do have to go through your schools and those type of things, and we do that every year. But I would say, I don't know if this is fair, but I feel like our lens of government, and probably all spheres of government, should be common sense, right? For the most part. What can I explain to other people? Because we are ultimately responsible for our own vote. And we are accountable to whether it's the media that asks us a question, whether it's anyone in the audience to say, why did you vote this way? Help me understand what that is. We have to be able to articulate that. So we have to understand that, not just at a high level, but really sometimes in the weeds to get our hands around why I voted one way versus another way. And then especially when you get into some big ticket items, things that are very expensive, we're stewards of that dollar, and we're stewards of someone else's dollar, which is the taxpayer. So I always feel like we have an added responsibility to be able to articulate that.
Let me ask you guys a question. How much civics classes or curriculum do you have in your 4-year high school curriculum?
How much civics?
How much civics?
Community?
Government.
Government class. And then I would say like student council, and there's a lot of leadership programs in all of the schools. I don't know.
And the reason I'm asking is because we've had some discussions with your superintendent and some of your board to look into that. So I wasn't sure about exactly how much you have on your curriculum focus as of right now. Is it 1 semester? Is it 2 semesters?
One semester. One semester.
Just going off that question, sir, my general thing is do you believe that the government should increase its efforts to educate the population on things such as local government, what we're doing today? Or do you believe, as I don't know, there asks, that the individuals should go out and strive for this knowledge themselves?
Both.
Both, yeah, I was gonna say both.
There's, and I hate to use this old, adage, but it's about having boots on the ground. It's about getting into committees and that affect you, that hits close to home. I'm encouraged by the youth of today that is now starting a surge to be more involved. And I hope it also is translated over here in Amarillo and Potter County as well. And because you got a little future, and you have the ideas, you have the idealism, and you have the grit and the energy to move this ball down the court. And it's certainly it's your future, so you need to be a part of a process. So find something that really affects you, that hits close to home, and then once you get involved in that, you'll just expand your horizons and see that there are many other things that you think that will be effective and you would love to participate in.
All the counties in Texas belong to a large state group called the Texas Association of Counties. That TAC, or Texas Association of Counties, has put together a series of materials called Texas Counties Deliver. And there is a lot of material available that if you contact any of us, we can probably get you with that material if you ever want to try to get something like that.
And we're going to show some of that material here during lunch, Commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything else, Katie? Anybody else?
Part of the question about how do you get on the ballot, let me just explain that. In Texas, all over Texas, precinct 1, precinct 3, we run the same time as the presidential elections. Precinct 2, precinct 4, and the county judge run on the gubernatorial election cycle. So we have to keep aware of when the application or entry deadline is to run. When that deadline comes, or before that, they have a period that you can apply or file for election. In Potter County, if you run on the Republican ticket or the Democratic ticket, you have to go to your county chair. There's a county Republican chair and there's a county Democratic chair. And then you file your paperwork, which has to be, you call it, certified, well, you know, notarized, excuse me, notarized, plus you have to pay the fee, unless you go out and get a whole mess of signatures. But for a county commissioner, it's $750 to run. It's different for other positions, but generally that filing period is from December to about the first part of January of the year of the election.
A little added background on that. If you are considering running for a public office, it's very important that you go to those meetings prior to your committing to running for office. Find out what's going on. Make sure you're aware of the problems or whatever might be happening in that. If you're running for one of our positions, not precinct 1, okay. But if you are running, want to run for office, like I said, I attended meetings a year and a half before I finally decided that I was going to run for office. So I would encourage you to do that, get educated on what you're running for in that particular area.
And I'm sure you hear this in school, but obviously everything you do in social media, right? I mean, I'm sure you hear that, but be very aware of who you are and the information you're putting out there and what you aspire to be. And that's not just public office. I mean, employers hire, social media miners, if you will, that go up there and look for this information, especially.
Why don't you stress that? Why don't you? Because
stress, underline it. I mean, those are real jobs now in HR that they go out and look for a social media presence. So especially as you aspire to be whatever that is, the higher you move in your professional career, the more critical that is. Because organizations, whether it's public office or just a corporation, right, they're looking, you become the presence of that organization. And so whatever you have out there echoes that presence. So I want you all to be phenomenal leaders in your life, but be very aware of your presence.
Judge, you want to recognize Terry and Judge Horn, you know, on it, so I know.
Yeah, Terry Easterly and Debbie Horn, stand up, please. I think you're going to be part of the program today. Terry is the director of probation department, and Judge Horn is a JP, precinct 1 JP judge.
You know any of you know Mr. Easterling personally?
No, say no. The answer to that is no. Okay.
That is one of the questions. Just speaking of social media, all of our court meetings are recorded and posted on our YouTube page, so you can find them if you search Potter County, Texas, as well as all the voting questions. PotterCountyVotes.com is the elections webpage where you can go and find the next election, voting locations, and what's going to be on the ballot, so you can study and make an informed decision.
Right. We are going to take a 10-minute break before lunch gets here. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Very, very well attended. Very good job. Thank you.